This is Matthew Cratter from Bitcoin University, and today I wanted to talk about something that I'm calling crypto dysphoria. When you go to a crypto conference, do you sometimes have trouble figuring out whether to use the securities bathroom or the commodities bathroom? Do you go around calling yourself a commodity when everyone who looks at you can clearly see that you're a security? If so, you may be suffering from crypto dysphoria, and your project may be suffering from it. It can definitely be difficult, but don't despair. There is help for your situation, and I'm going to teach you in this video how to know if you are secretly a security inside, even though you really wish that you had been born a commodity. Now, securities are issued by centralized groups to raise money. For example, Microsoft issues both stock and bonds. Microsoft issues these securities in order to raise capital to pay its software developers, etc. And Microsoft needs to register these securities with the SEC if its executives would like to avoid jail time. Commodities, by contrast, are quite different. A commodity, unlike a stock or a bond, is an asset without an issuer. Things like oil, copper, gold, these are all physical commodities. But you can also have a digital commodity like Bitcoin. It's an asset without an issuer. It was not issued by a corporation. It was not issued by a centralized foundation. It was not issued by a government or a city or anything like this. And there's this common understanding now in the US between the SEC, the CFTC, and other regulators that Bitcoin is a commodity. But here's this question: is ETH a commodity? And whenever I discuss this, lots of people point me in the direction of William Hinman. William Hinman was this lawyer who had a conflict of interest. He was working for a pro-Ethereum firm during his tenure as SEC director, and while at the same time he was making nice comments about Ethereum. Now, I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that he was earning money from Ethereum people. This is the speech I'm going to be referring to. This took place in San Francisco in June of 2018. And there are two relevant parts. First, we're going to look at what Hinman has to say about Bitcoin, or had to say about Bitcoin in 2018. This is a quote from his speech. And so when I look at Bitcoin today, I do not see a central third party whose efforts are a key determining factor in the enterprise. The network on which Bitcoin functions is operational and appears to have been decentralized for some time. He was saying this even in 2018, perhaps from inception. Applying the disclosure regime of the federal securities laws to the offer and resale of Bitcoin would seem to add little value. So that's his thoughts on Bitcoin. Now, his thoughts on Ethereum are very interesting. Quote, and putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the creation of Ether. Now, when you're talking about the Howey Test and issuing securities, you can't really put this aside. And this is what a lot of people in the ETH community don't understand. But let's continue to see what he said after this, though this is a gigantic red flag, because you can't put aside the who issued these securities, because that does have an impact on future ownership and future incentives, which is the whole point of securities law, to disclose these to people so that they have a reasonable view of who's driving the project, who owns what, and what their incentives are. But that, to go back to Hinman, putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the creation of Ether, based on my understanding of the present state of Ether, the Ethereum network, and its decentralized structure, current offers and sales of Ether are not securities transactions. This was back in 2018. So what I wanted to do today was to examine the present state of Ether. And it turns out that it actually has a trademark, thanks to Corey Clipston for pointing this out to us in one of his tweets. Ethereum is trademarked, just like, and of course he's being ironic here, just like gold, oil, and Bitcoin. These are obviously commodities. They don't have a trademark because no one issues them. No one owns the intellectual property. If you have a trademark, this is a huge sign that you are actually a centralized group that's trying not to be a centralized group in order to skirt securities law. And here's Predator pointing out how many legal commodities are trademarked, and he's actually linked here to the trademark details for Ethereum. You can actually go to ethereum.org and read this description of the trademarks here as well. The foundation name, the terms Ethereum Switzerland, foundation logo, all related names are trademarks of the foundation or its affiliates or licensors. Who knows, maybe Joe Lubin owns some of these as well. If you're enjoying this video so far, I just ask you to help to support the channel by subscribing to the channel, clicking that like button, and leaving a comment. Now, maybe I got something wrong here, so I wanted to make sure that we know what Vitalik Buterin, who's one of the co-founders of Ethereum, has to say about this. Here's a tweet from February of 2020. Okay, I admit that the Ethereum Foundation's ownership over the Ethereum trademark exists, and this is a sore point in public blockchain governance. This is not only a sore point, this is a clear sign that you are playing around with unregistered securities. They were issued by a centralized group, but they haven't been properly registered with the SEC. And this is ultimately what's going to get Vitalik and Joe Lubin, everyone in the project, in a lot of trouble. Here's the actual trademark details for Ether itself. So this is a security that's pretending to be a commodity, but it actually has a trademark. If you're a commodity, you clearly would not have a trademark for your asset. It'd be ridiculous to say crude oil, TM, gold, TM, copper, TM. Here's a really important point. If your project has a leader, if it has a foundation, if it has a roadmap, if it has a trademark, if you're a project that raised money for software development by issuing tokens through pre-mine or pre-sale like Ethereum did, and if you're a project that you change your consensus mechanism 8 years into the project from proof of work to proof of stake, this is a huge change, you're definitely a security, and you should probably stop trying to pass yourself off as a commodity. And it's okay, you're suffering from crypto dysphoria, but we all still love and support you, and we're going to be there for you when Gary Gensler comes to take your hand to do a special slow dance with the SEC that's called the Unregistered Securities Dance at their Unregistered Securities Ball. I want to link to a couple resources here for those of you who haven't seen them. Here is Vitalik's roadmap for Ethereum. You have the merge, the surge, the verge, the purge, and the splurge. This is a sign that you might be a security if you have a roadmap that's put out by a centralized leader. Here is an interview with Vitalik 24 hours after the launch of the Ether presale. This is just like an IPO. There was a presale. By contrast, Bitcoin obviously had nothing like this. There was no pre-sale, and anyone who wanted tokens had to actually do the proof of work to mine it. It wasn't issued by a centralized group of people to fund development. Satoshi worked on his own, he launched it, and then he disappeared. And this is one of the huge differences. Jack Mallers tells a great story in this tweet. He says, funny story, my stepmom went to a conference in the summer of 2014 and happened to be seated at a table with Vitalik. He pitched her Ethereum, a crazy roadmap, and expectation of profit, and had ETH that he was actively selling in a pre-sale. These are all signs and characteristics that you've just passed the Howey Test and need to be regulated as a security rather than getting a commodity exemption like Bitcoin has. But here's a very clear example of Vitalik doing something very much like an IPO roadshow where he's trying to drum up support and he's issuing these securities. What's so bad about ETH being a security? Are they just going to have to pay some fine? No, it's going to be much worse than that, because Ethereum, when they're forced to register at the SEC, is going to need to disclose all material information related to the project's principles, their holdings, their prospects, risks to the project, etc. Just like any company, like Coinbase, for example, needed to file an S1 before it could go public. And the problem for Ethereum is it's a very dirty project. These disclosures will almost certainly lead to a rush to the exits by institutional investors and others who are already nervous after the FTX blow up. Because once you see how much ETH Vitalik owns, once you see how much ETH Joe Lubin owns, and this will all need to be disclosed, and once you make that connection that he also owns Consensus, he controls the infrastructure through MetaMask and through Infura as well, these are huge conflicts of interest. And this is the reason that ETH was originally issued in Switzerland to try to skirt these U.S. securities laws. But if ETH is going to trade on American crypto exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken and Gemini, it does need to register at the SEC. The problem with registering is all of this material information is going to come out. And the way you know that it's not good is because they went through all these machinations to avoid registering with the SEC. Altcoins like ETH serve no other purpose than this sort of regulatory arbitrage and evading existing securities law. Ethereum, Ether is an asset that was issued to fund software development, and you have these very strange legal structures like the Ethereum Foundation, and you have Consensus, and there's this effort to try to obscure this fact. But this is a way, these altcoins are a way for venture capitalists and other institutional investors to fund a project like Ethereum, be able to dump the tokens on retail investors at places like Coinbase without ever having to file for an IPO. So VCs, venture capitalists, this is a really great business for them because they don't have to wait the normal 5 or 10 years for an IPO or for someone to take them over. They can just dump these tokens immediately. By contrast, Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer, and it's a true digital commodity. And Bitcoin, unlike ETH, obviously does not have a trademark either. But I think this was really a great catch by Corey, pointing out that Ethereum is trademarked. This is just another wound for Ethereum, and another sign that Ethereum is going to end up being a security, being called a security by U.S. regulators, and being forced to register with the SEC, or otherwise leave the U.S. and lose access to the very deep pools of capital that are available only in U.S. markets. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.